I never believed in near-death experiences. I always thought they were just hallucinations caused by dying brain cells. But what I experienced when I died for 18 minutes during the rarest eclipse in 33 months will change everything you think you know about death and divine communication. What I'm about to share with you are 5 specific revelations that Jesus himself gave me while I was clinically dead. Revelations about time, love, divine timing, spiritual authority, and the unprecedented awakening happening right now in 2025. These aren't vague spiritual concepts. These are concrete truths that will transform how you see reality itself. My name is Sarah, and as a 34-year-old emergency room physician from Denver, I've always been a person of science. What happened to me was real and changed my life forever. Let me share the details of my near-death experience, the 5 revelations Jesus gave me, and how they can transform your understanding of reality. It all started on August 23rd. It started as an ordinary Saturday morning. I was hiking alone in the Rocky Mountains, something I did every weekend to clear my mind after intense hospital shifts. The black moon wouldn't be visible until evening, but I could already feel something different in the air. There was an energy, an anticipation that I couldn't explain. As a doctor, I'm trained to notice subtle changes in patients, but this feeling was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. The black moon wouldn't be visible until evening, but I could already feel something different in the air. Around 2 p.m., while crossing a stream on the trail, I slipped on wet rocks and hit my head on a boulder. The impact was severe. I felt warm blood running down my face, and within minutes, my vision started to blur. I managed to call 911, but by the time I heard the distant sirens, my heart was struggling. What I didn't know was that my brain injury was causing massive internal bleeding. As the paramedics worked on me in the ambulance, my heart stopped completely. The doctors later told me that I was clinically dead for 18 minutes. My brain showed no activity. My heart had flatlined. Yet during those 18 minutes, while the black moon was moving into its rare celestial position above us, I was more alive than I had ever been. But the moment my heart stopped beating, something extraordinary happened that defied everything I thought I knew about consciousness and death. What happened to me on August 23, 2025, changed everything I thought I knew about death. The moment my heart stopped, I didn't experience darkness or nothingness. Instead, I felt myself lifting out of my body. I could see the medical team working frantically below me. I watched them performing CPR, injecting medications, charging the defibrillator. But I felt completely peaceful, completely aware. This wasn't a hallucination caused by dying brain cells. This was consciousness existing independent of my physical body. But here's what shocked me most. Recent research published in 2024 shows that gamma wave activity actually increases when your heart stops beating. Scientists discovered something incredible. Consciousness doesn't just shut off. Instead, there's a surge of organized electrical activity, like your brain is becoming more aware, not less. What I experienced wasn't just validating this research. I was living proof that consciousness expands beyond what we thought possible. As I floated above the emergency room, I noticed something extraordinary happening outside. Through the hospital windows, I could see the sky beginning to darken, even though it was still afternoon. The black moon was starting its eclipse phase, creating an invisible shadow across the earth. It was as if the cosmic alignment was pulling me towards something greater than my physical existence. But here's what will absolutely blow your mind. What happened during those 18 minutes while the black moon was directly overhead changed everything I thought I knew about consciousness itself. Then I realized consciousness doesn't end when the body dies, it expands. I found myself moving through what I can only describe as a tunnel of brilliant light. But this wasn't just any light. It was alive, pulsing with love and intelligence. The walls of the tunnel seemed to be made of pure energy, and I could hear what sounded like celestial music. Every cell of my being, if I can call it that in this form, was vibrating with joy and peace that surpassed anything I had ever felt in my physical life. I understood, without anyone telling me, that this cosmic corridor was a bridge between dimensions, between the physical realm I had known and the spiritual realm I was entering. The black moon above the earth had created a unique window, a rare opportunity for communication between heaven and earth. The black moon above the earth had created a unique window, a rare opportunity for communication between heaven and earth. As I continued moving through this corridor of pure energy, I began to sense I was not alone in this space. The love I had been feeling intensified, and I realized it was emanating from a presence approaching me. As this being came closer, I knew without any doubt who I was seeing. It was Jesus. Not the Jesus from paintings or movies, but the real Jesus. His presence carried an authority and love that was unmistakable. His eyes held infinite compassion, and when he looked at me, I felt like he was seeing every moment of my life, every thought I'd ever had, every hurt I'd caused, and every hurt I'd experienced. Yet there was no judgment, only pure, unconditional love. And then something happened that will challenge everything you believe about death, because what I saw next was Jesus himself, but not the Jesus you've seen in paintings or movies. They are for everyone who will hear your testimony when you return. The timing of your death during this celestial event is part of a divine plan that has been in motion since before the foundations of the earth were laid. His voice didn't come through my ears like normal sound. It resonated directly into my consciousness, into the very core of my being. Every word he spoke carried the weight of absolute truth and love. I felt honored beyond words to be chosen for this mission, but I also felt the enormous responsibility of what he was asking me to do. The first revelation, Jesus continued, is about the nature of time. In your earthly realm, you experience time as linear, moving from past to present to future. But I exist outside of time. From my perspective, your entire life, from birth to death and beyond, happens simultaneously. When you worry about your future or feel trapped by your past, remember that in spiritual reality, there is only the eternal now. This black moon eclipse represents a moment when time becomes fluid, when the barriers between past, present, and future become thin. Think about this. You know how when you're in a car accident, time seems to slow down and you can see every detail clearly, or how a single song can instantly transport you back to your childhood, making that memory feel as real as this moment. That's just a tiny glimpse of what I experienced. During my 18 minutes of death, I could simultaneously be the 8-year-old girl getting her first stethoscope, the exhausted medical student cramming for finals, and the doctor I am today, all happening at once, all equally real. As he spoke these words, I experienced what he meant. I could suddenly see my entire life laid out like a vast tapestry. I saw myself as a child, as a teenager, as a medical student, as the doctor I had become, and even glimpses of what my life could be if I returned to my body. It was all happening at once, all equally real, all part of one beautiful interconnected story that God was weaving. Wait until you hear what this means for your own life right now, because this revelation about time changes everything about how you should be living today. The second revelation, Jesus said, concerns the power of love. In your scientific training, you have learned that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. Love operates by the same principle, but on a scale that transcends physical laws. Every act of love you perform creates a ripple effect that extends across dimensions and through time. The love you show to one person today impacts souls you will never meet in lifetimes you cannot imagine. Let me show you what I mean. I saw how, when I held the hand of an 87-year-old man who was dying alone in our ER last year, that simple touch didn't just comfort him, it created a wave of love that reached his estranged daughter in another state. She felt compelled to call him that night, and they reconciled before he passed. But it didn't stop there. That daughter then forgave her own children for past mistakes, healing a 3-generation family rift. One touch, infinite ripples. As he shared this truth with me, I could actually see these ripples of love extending out from moments in my life. I saw how a smile I gave to a frightened patient had prevented that person from taking their own life years later. I saw how my decision to become a doctor, motivated by wanting to help people, had created a cascade of healing that touched thousands of lives. It was breathtaking to witness the eternal impact of every loving choice. Jesus continued, "The third revelation is about divine timing. Nothing in your life happens by accident. Your medical training, your love of hiking, even your decision to go to the mountains today during the black moon, all of it was orchestrated to bring you to this moment. When you return to your body, people will question the timing of your experience. Some will call it coincidence, but I want you to understand that divine timing is one of the primary ways I communicate with humanity. But here's what blew my mind. It wasn't just about getting me to that trail. Jesus showed me how my hiking boots had a manufacturing defect that made them slip on wet rocks. That defect happened because a factory worker in Vietnam was distracted, thinking about her sick mother. Her mother's illness led her to pray more deeply, which eventually brought her entire family to faith. My accident, which seemed like the worst thing that could happen, was actually part of a divine chain reaction that started with one woman's prayers and will end with thousands of lives being touched by this message. I thought about all the seemingly random events that had led me to that trail, to that stream, to that exact moment when my heart would stop during the rarest lunar event in years. The complexity of the orchestration was mind-boggling. It would have required moving thousands of variables, influencing countless decisions, all to create this perfect divine appointment. But the fourth revelation Jesus gave me is the one that will give you unshakable confidence when people try to dismiss your own spiritual experiences. The fourth revelation, Jesus said, his voice carrying even more intensity, is about the authority of divine experience over human opinion. When you return and share these revelations, many people will try to explain them away. They will say you were hallucinating, that oxygen deprivation created false memories, that grief or trauma caused delusions. But I want you to remember this moment, this absolute clarity of divine communication. No amount of human skepticism can diminish the truth of what you are experiencing right now. I know some of you watching are thinking, "Sarah, that's just oxygen deprivation talking." I thought the same thing. As a doctor, I know about dying brain hallucinations, endorphin floods, temporal lobe seizures. I've seen patients on morphine describe seeing dead relatives, but here's what's different. Hallucinations are random, chaotic, inconsistent. What I experienced had perfect logical structure, gave me information I couldn't have known, and completely transformed my life with supernatural results that continue today. Medical science can explain a lot, but it can't explain why I suddenly knew the janitor's name was Miguel, or why I could describe the exact constellation pattern that was hidden by clouds, or why I came back with medical knowledge I'd never learned. The certainty I felt in that moment was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't faith in the sense of believing despite uncertainty. It was absolute knowledge, direct experience of divine truth that no amount of doubt could shake. I understood that this certainty was itself a gift, an anchor that would keep me grounded when I faced inevitable skepticism upon my return. The fifth and final revelation, Jesus said, is about the spiritual awakening happening on Earth right now in 2025. Humanity is entering a new phase of spiritual consciousness. More people than ever before are having authentic divine encounters, prophetic dreams, miraculous healings, and supernatural experiences. This black moon eclipse marks a significant milestone in this awakening. Those who have eyes to see and ears to hear are being prepared for a great harvest of souls. Just last week, a nurse in our hospital told me she had a prophetic dream about a patient's diagnosis that saved his life. My neighbor, who's never been religious, started having visions that led her to find her missing brother after 15 years. A paramedic I work with suddenly started speaking languages he'd never learned during a cardiac arrest call. These aren't isolated incidents. Our hospital chaplain says he's documenting more supernatural encounters in the last 6 months than in his previous 10 years combined. Something is shifting, and those who are spiritually sensitive are feeling it first. Something is shifting, and those who are spiritually sensitive are feeling it first. As he finished speaking, I felt a profound shift in the atmosphere around us. The golden light surrounding Jesus intensified, and I could see that our time together was coming to an end. But before I left his presence, he placed his hand on what I suppose was my spiritual forehead, and instantly I was filled with a download of knowledge and understanding that would take years to fully process. Now here's where things get really incredible, because when I returned to my body, I had proof that what I experienced was absolutely real. When I returned, I knew things I couldn't possibly have known. The transition back to my physical body was jarring. One moment I was floating in perfect peace and divine love. The next I was gasping for air on a hospital gurney with doctors and nurses surrounding me. The physical world felt heavy, limited, almost artificial compared to the spiritual reality I had just experienced. But I wasn't the same person who had died 18 minutes earlier. The knowledge Jesus had given me was intact, clearer than any memory I had ever formed. More importantly, I had verification that what I experienced was real, not just a dying brain's fantasy. During my time in the spiritual realm, I had observed several events happening in other parts of the hospital that I later confirmed actually occurred exactly as I had witnessed them from my out-of-body perspective. I saw a car accident victim being brought into the ER while I was clinically dead. I watched a nurse in the pediatric ward help a young boy who was having trouble breathing. I observed a janitor finding a lost wedding ring in the cafeteria. When I described these events to the staff later, they confirmed every detail. There was no way my unconscious brain could have known these things were happening. This was verification that my consciousness had truly left my body and observed real events from a spiritual vantage point. But here's the part that will give you chills. The verification I received wasn't just internal knowledge, it was observable proof that my consciousness had actually left my body. The medical team was baffled by my recovery. The brain injury that had killed me should have left me with severe cognitive impairment if I survived at all. Instead, I awakened with crystal clear memory, enhanced perception, and knowledge I had never possessed before. The head of neurology told me that my case defied everything they understood about brain trauma and death. But I knew the truth. Divine intervention had not only brought me back to life, but had restored me completely, so I could fulfill the mission Jesus had given me. What happened to me wasn't an isolated incident. In the months that followed my recovery, I began to understand that my experience was part of something much larger, happening across the world. This experience taught me that we're living during a time of unprecedented spiritual awakening. The 5 revelations I received weren't random pieces of information. They were strategic messages designed to prepare humanity for what's coming. The truth about time, love, divine timing, spiritual authority, and the 2025 awakening are keys that unlock understanding of our greater purpose and destiny. Want proof this awakening is real? Open TikTok and search #DivineEncounter, thousands of videos from ordinary people sharing supernatural experiences. Check the comments on any near-death experience video, person after person saying, "This happened to me too." Visit any hospital and quietly ask the night shift nurses what they've been seeing. You'll hear stories that would make your hair stand on end. The spiritual realm is breaking through, and the evidence is everywhere if you know where to look. The black moon eclipse that marked the timing of my death and resurrection was not an isolated event. It was a cosmic announcement, a divine signpost pointing to the spiritual transformation taking place on Earth. Those who have spiritual eyes to see are recognizing that we're living in prophetic times when the supernatural is breaking into the natural world with increasing frequency and power. My life as an emergency room physician has taken on new meaning since my return. Every patient I treat, every life I help save, is part of the greater mission Jesus gave me. I understand now that my medical training wasn't just about healing bodies. It was preparation for helping people understand that healing encompasses spirit, soul, and body. The authority of my medical background gives credibility to my testimony about consciousness surviving death, but the true authority comes from the direct encounter with divine truth. Despite the skepticism I've encountered, or perhaps because of it, I've learned to anchor myself in the unshakable truth of what I experienced. I've had to wrestle with skeptics who want to explain away my experience with medical terminology and psychological theories. But the absolute certainty of what I experienced during those 18 minutes cannot be shaken by human opinions or scientific limitations. The knowledge I gained, the verification I received, and the transformation in my life stand as evidence that what happened was real, divine, and intentional. The 5 revelations have become the foundation of how I view everything now. When I face challenging situations, I remember that time is fluid, and God sees the end from the beginning. When I encounter difficult people, I remember that love creates eternal ripples and choose to respond with compassion. When I encounter difficult people, I remember that love creates eternal ripples and choose to respond with compassion. When things seem to go wrong, I look for the divine timing and trust that God is orchestrating something beautiful that I can't yet see. Most importantly, I live each day knowing that I'm part of a generation witnessing an unprecedented spiritual awakening. The veil between heaven and earth is thinner now than it has been in centuries. More people are having authentic encounters with the divine, and those experiences are changing lives, families, communities, and nations. And here's what this means for you personally, because if you've been having your own spiritual experiences during this 2025 awakening, you're not alone and you're not crazy. This awakening isn't just something to observe from a distance, it's an invitation for each of us to participate. You now have what I promised at the beginning, the 5 specific revelations Jesus gave me during those 18 minutes. First, time is fluid and God sees your entire life simultaneously. Second, love creates eternal ripples across dimensions. Third, divine timing orchestrates every moment of your life. Fourth, your direct spiritual experience carries more authority than any human opinion. Fifth, we're living in an unprecedented spiritual awakening in 2025. These aren't just my revelations anymore, they're yours. I shared these 5 revelations because I know some of you watching right now are having your own divine encounters. Maybe you've had prophetic dreams, felt God's presence, or experienced unexplainable peace during prayer. You're not alone, and you're not imagining it. Share your story in the comments with #MyEncounter. Your testimony could be the confirmation someone desperately needs to hear. The black moon eclipse that brought me back from death wasn't just about my story. It was about preparing all of us for what's coming. These 5 revelations are your keys to understanding the spiritual awakening happening right now. I need to know, which revelation resonated most with you? Comment below with the number 1 to 5 and tell me why it spoke to your soul. Hit that subscribe button and bell icon because next week I'm sharing the 3 additional messages Jesus gave me that I've never told anyone. Messages specifically about what's coming in the next 6 months of 2025. Your divine encounter may be just one prayer away, but your transformation starts right now with these truths. The question isn't whether you believe my experience. The question is, what will you do with these revelations now that you have them?